My mother-in-law just suffered a massive stroke in the delivery room the moment she realized I birthed a daughter instead of the $50 million grandson she demanded for the will. I lied to her face for 9 months, letting her drive my husband into bankruptcy and madness, because I discovered they were plotting to lock me in a psychiatric ward the second my baby was born to steal custody. They looked at me and saw a vessel for their legacy. I looked at them and saw predators waiting to be trapped. I let them buy the blue nursery furniture. I let them leverage the house. And I let them believe they had won, just so I could watch the light leave their eyes when the truth finally came out. Now, my husband is being dragged away in handcuffs for bank fraud. The family estate is being seized by creditors, and I am holding my baby girl in a hospital room that feels like a crime scene. I burned their entire dynasty to the ground to save my child, but my hands are shaking so hard I can barely hold her. I need you to be honest with me. Did I go too far to protect my daughter, or did they deserve to lose everything? If you looked at my life through the filtered lens of Instagram, you would hate me, and frankly, I would not blame you. My name is Esme Walker. I am 33 years old. Until 6 months ago, I was a creative director at a top-tier advertising agency in Manhattan, managing million-dollar campaigns and living on triple-shot espressos. Now, I'm a professional incubator. I live in a 6-bedroom Georgian colonial estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, surrounded by manicured hedges that are cut with more precision than a diamond, and neighbors who value their privacy more than their souls. I am married to Liam Walker, the scion of a real estate dynasty that has been prominent in New England since the late 19th century. I have a closet full of cashmere, a Tesla in the driveway that I rarely drive, and a bank account that I am not allowed to see. From the outside, this is the American dream. It is the finish line everyone is sprinting toward. But let me tell you something about silence. In a small apartment, silence is peaceful. In a 5,000 square foot mansion, silence is heavy. It presses against your eardrums. It watches you. I sat in the sunroom, staring at the untouched cup of herbal tea steaming on the marble coaster. The condensation was pooling at the bottom, threatening to leave a ring. I reached out to wipe it, my hand instinctively checking the swell of my belly. 7 months, my career, my independence, my late nights in the city, all traded for this rounded stomach and the promise of a legacy. Inner monologue. I used to lead board meetings. I used to make grown men cry if their copy was not sharp enough. Now I am afraid of leaving a water ring on a table I do not even own. The front door chimed. Not a knock, the electronic beep of the security code being punched in. My stomach dropped. I knew that rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, fast. Entitled, Esme, darling, are you in the solarium? Saúde dos numerales mayor que Patricia. My mother-in-law did not believe in calling ahead. She believed that since her name was on the deed of the house, technically held by the family trust, she had right-of-way. Like an ambulance in traffic. I am in here. Patricia, I called out, forcing my voice to sound light, airy, grateful. Patricia Walker swept into the room like a cold front. She was 60, but thanks to a team of surgeons in Switzerland and a diet of kale and judgment, she looked a frozen 45. She was wearing a cream Chanel suit that probably cost more than my college tuition. Her eyes, pale blue and piercing, immediately went to my stomach, bypassing my face entirely. Oh, look at you, she cooed, walking over and placing a cold, manicured hand on my belly. She did not hug me. She hugged the bump, He is getting so big. I can feel him. Inner monologue. She always says he. Never the baby. Never it. Always he. It is not a prediction. It is an order. We do not know the gender yet. Patricia. I reminded her gently, leaning back into the floral armchair. Liam and I want it to be a surprise. Patricia waved her hand dismissively, the diamond on her finger catching the afternoon light. Nonsense. A walker always produces a male heir first. It is biology. Esme, it is history. Speaking of which, I brought you something. She snapped her fingers, and for the first time, I noticed her driver standing in the doorway, holding a heavy thermal container. He placed it on the table and retreated instantly. Bone broth, Patricia announced, unscrewing the lid. A pungent, earthy smell filled the pristine room. Simmered for 48 hours with herbs imported from the Himalayas. It is crucial for the development of the male brain. Drink. She poured a bowl. It was not a suggestion. I am actually not very hungry. Patricia, I had a big lunch. I lead. I had eaten 3 crackers and an apple. My appetite had vanished weeks ago, replaced by a gnawing anxiety I could not explain. Esme. Her voice dropped an octave. The smile stayed plastered on her face, but her eyes went dead. You look pale. You look frail. Do you want to deprive my grandson of the nutrients he needs? You are merely the vessel. Darling, you have to keep the engine running. Inner monologue. The vessel. That is all I am. A glorified shipping container for her precious deoxyribonucleic acid. I picked up the spoon. My hand trembled slightly. I forced the liquid down. It tasted metallic and bitter. Patricia watched every swallow, nodding with satisfaction, like a farmer watching a prize pig feed. Liam is working late again tonight, she said casually, checking her phone. Again? I paused, the spoon hovering halfway to my mouth. He said he was coming home early to help me assemble the crib. Business. Darling, the market is Sao Ting Hao Ling. Doi. Volatile. She did not look up. He is securing the future for this little prince. You should be grateful he is so hardworking. Most men would be out playing golf. That was the first red flag, though I was too submerged in the broth and the gaslighting to see it clearly. Liam had not been working hard. In fact, last week, when I tried to use the emergency credit card to buy prenatal vitamins because my primary card was declined, the transaction failed. Liam had laughed it off, blaming a banking glitch and security protocols. But how many glitches happen 3 times in a month? Patricia, I put the spoon down. About the finances, Sao Ting Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater. Then I noticed some odd mail on Liam's desk. Something from the bank about overdue. Stop. She cut me off. Her voice was like a whip crack. She leaned forward, invading my personal space. The smell of her expensive perfume was suffocating. You are hormonal. Esme, pregnancy makes women paranoid. I remember when I was carrying Liam, I thought the gardener was a Central Intelligence Agency agent. She let out a dry, practiced laugh. Do not worry your pretty little head about money. The Walker family has weathered depressions and wars. We are not going anywhere. Your only job, your singular focus, is to deliver a healthy, screaming grandson. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. I have arranged for the decorators to come tomorrow. We are painting the nursery blue, royal blue, but Sao Ting Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than we agreed on yellow. Neutral, I protested, my voice rising. Liam and I agreed. Liam agrees with me, she said simply, walking toward the door. He just does not want to upset you. Blue is strong. Blue is power. Yellow is for Xiao Yu Jinghao Lin. 2# is greater than cowards. She punched the code to exit, pausing at the threshold. Rest up. Esme, the ultrasound is next week. I expect good news. The estate planning depends on it. The door clicked shut. The silence rushed back in. But this time, it felt different. It felt like the air in a submarine that was slowly running out of oxygen. I looked at the half-empty bowl of dark broth. Inner monologue. The estate planning depends on it. She did not say our happiness depends on it. She said the estate planning. What exactly are they planning? And why do I feel like if I do not produce this boy, I am going to be discarded like a wrapper? I stood up and walked to the window, watching her black town car glide down the long driveway, past the iron gates. My hand rested on my belly again. I had a feeling, a deep, primal intuition that had nothing to do with hormones and everything to do with survival. There was something rotten in the house of Walker, and I was trapped right in the center of it. The waiting room of the Greenwich Fertility and Obstetrics Center did not look like a medical facility. It looked like the lobby of a boutique hotel in Zurich. There were no crinkled magazines or crying toddlers here. Instead, there was a waterfall feature cascading down a slate wall and a barista serving organic decaf lattes to women who wore yoga pants that cost more than my first car. I sat on the edge of a dove gray velvet sofa, my hands clasping and unclasping in my lap. Liam sat next to me, scrolling incessantly on his phone. His leg was bouncing up and down, a nervous tick that vibrated through the floorboards and into my own body. Patricia was pacing. She was arguing with the receptionist, a young woman who looked like she was about to cry. I demand to be in the room, Patricia hissed, her voice low but carrying effortlessly across the silent room. I am paying for this appointment. I am paying for this entire wing of the building. Practically, it is my grandson. I have a right to see him. Inner monologue. Grandson. She says it with such certainty, like she has already bribed God and is just waiting for the receipt. The heavy oak door opened, and Dr. Evans stepped out. He was a silver-haired man with the kind of calm authority that usually silenced rooms. But Patricia Walker was immune to authority that was not her own. Mrs. Walker, Dr. Evans said, his voice firm, as I have explained to you and your son 3 times, this is a medical procedure. For the privacy and comfort of the patient, only the husband is allowed, and only if Esme consents. Today, I believe Esme needs a moment of calm. Patricia's nostrils flared. She turned her icy gaze to Liam. Do something. Liam, tell him. Liam looked up from his phone, his face pale and sweaty. He looked at his mother, then at the doctor, and finally, briefly, at me. Mom, maybe it is better if you wait here. Liam mumbled, avoiding her eyes. It will only be 20 minutes, Patricia scoffed, smoothing her skirt with an aggressive swipe of her hand. Fine, but I want a picture the second you know, and it better be the right news. I followed Dr. Evans into the exam room. The door clicked shut, cutting off the toxic energy radiating from the lobby. The silence was instant and merciful. Dr. Evans sighed as he prepped the ultrasound machine. I apologize for that. Esme, your blood pressure is slightly elevated. We need to get that down. He squirted the warm gel onto my stomach. I stared at the ceiling tiles, trying to disassociate. I tried to imagine I was back in my office in Manhattan, pitching a campaign, feeling powerful and competent. But the cold sensor touching my skin brought me back to reality. "There," Dr. Evans whispered. "Listen." The room filled with a rhythmic whooshing sound. The heartbeat, it was fast, strong, and unrelenting. Tears pricked my eyes. For a moment, the politics, the money, and the suffocating expectations vanished. It was just me and this tiny life. "Esme," Dr. Evans said softly, turning the screen toward me. "Do you see that?" I looked at the grainy black and white image. I saw a curve of a spine, a tiny hand. "Do you want to know the gender?" he asked. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Dr. Evans smiled. "It is a girl, a healthy, beautiful baby girl." The world stopped. Saoyuting Haoling. "Iki, a girl." Inner monologue. "A daughter. I am having a daughter. A little version of me. Someone I can teach to be strong, to be independent, to never let a man or a mother-in-law own her soul." But then, the cold reality crashed down on me like an avalanche. Patricia's voice echoed in my head. "The estate planning depends on it. A walker always produces a male heir first." I looked at Dr. Evans. He saw the panic in my eyes. "Esme, is everything all right?" Saoyuting Haoling. 2# is greater than I need to use the restroom." I stammered, sitting up abruptly. "I need a minute." "Take your time," he said kindly. "There is a private changing area right there." I walked into the small changing room attached to the exam room. It shared a thin wall with the hallway where the waiting area was. I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection. My eyes looked haunted. Then I heard them. The ventilation vent above the sink must have connected directly to the corridor. The voices were muffled but distinct. "Saoyuting Haoling. 2# is greater than if it is a girl. The trust remains locked. Liam, you know the terms father set. $50 million, but only to a male heir." That was Patricia. Her voice was sharp, stripped of all the fake sweetness she used in public. "I know, Mom, I know." Liam's voice sounded desperate, almost whining. "But what do we do?" "The bank called again this morning. They are threatening to foreclose on the Greenwich house if we do not make a payment by next month. We need that trust fund unlocked." "Liam," Patricia hissed, "if she is carrying a girl, we are finished. We will be destitute. I will not be the laughingstock of the country club. If it is a girl, Saoyuting Haoling, 2# is greater than we might have to consider other options." "What options?" "We cut our losses. We divorce her, give her a settlement, and you find someone who can actually do the job. We cannot afford a useless mouth to feed." I stood frozen, gripping the porcelain sink until my knuckles turned white. Inner monologue. "Useless mouth to feed. That is my daughter she is talking about. My flesh and blood. And Liam, Saoyuting Haoling. 2# is greater than my husband. Saoyuting Haoling. 2# is greater than he is not defending me. He is worried about the house. He is worried about the money. They were broke." The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The private jets, the galas, the bone broth imported from the Himalayas. Saoyuting Haoling. 2 Rote ist große, als it was all a lee. They were drowning in debt, and my womb was their life raft. If I walked out there and told them the truth, my life, as I knew it, was over. They would discard me. They would make my life a living hell during the divorce. I would be a single mother with no job and no money, fighting a family that knew how to manipulate the legal system. But if I lied, Sao yu ting hao ling, or ting hao da yu. If I lied, I bought myself time, I bought myself safety, I bought myself access to their secrets. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. The terrified woman who walked in was gone. In her place was someone else, someone colder, someone willing to play the game. I wiped my face with a paper towel. I practiced my smile. It did not reach my eyes, but it did not need to. They would be too blinded by greed to notice. I walked out of the changing room, then out of the exam room into the hallway. Patricia and Liam were standing there, their heads bent together in conspiracy. They jumped apart when they saw me. The anxiety on their faces was palpable. They looked like two vultures waiting for a carcass. Well, Patricia demanded, taking a step forward. Her hands were shaking slightly. I placed a hand on my belly, channeling every ounce of acting experience I had from my days pitching to skeptical clients. I looked Liam dead in the eye. "It is a boy," I said softly. The silence hung in the air for 1 second, 2 seconds. Then, Patricia let out a scream of delight that sounded more like a war cry. She lunged at me, not hugging me, but grabbing my shoulders, her nails digging into my skin. "I knew it," she shrieked, looking up at the ceiling as if thanking a dark god. "I knew it. A grandson. The Walker line is safe." Liam slumped against the wall, letting out a breath that sounded like a sob. He looked at me with profound relief, and for the first time in months, he smiled. "You did it, Esme," he said, reaching out to touch my arm. "You actually did it." Inner monologue. "Look at them. They do not love me. They love the $50 million they think is growing inside me. They are celebrating their salvation, but they have no idea they are hugging the person who is going to destroy them." "Let us go celebrate," Patricia announced, linking her arm through mine, pulling me toward the exit. "We need to go shopping. We need everything in blue. We need to call the lawyer immediately to prepare the trust paperwork." I walked with them, a false smile plastered on my face. My heart was pounding against my ribs, beating out a new rhythm. Liar, liar, liar. But as I stepped out into the blinding afternoon sun, I knew one thing for certain. I would protect my daughter, and if I had to burn this entire family to the ground to do it, I would strike the match myself. The lie I told in the doctor's office acted like a shot of adrenaline straight into the heart of the Walker family. For the next 3 days, the manor was vibrating with a manic, terrifying energy. Patricia was no longer just a mother-in-law. She was a general, mobilizing for war, and I was her most valuable territory. She had gone into a frenzy of consumption that was grotesque to witness. Trucks from high-end furniture stores arrived hourly, unloading cribs made of mahogany, strollers imported from Sweden that cost more than a Honda Civic, and endless boxes of clothing. All of it was blue, navy blue, baby blue, cerulean, turquoise. It was as if she was trying to dye the very air in the house with testosterone. On Thursday morning, the house finally fell silent. Patricia had left early for a brunch at the country club to, as she put it, quietly spread the good news to the right people. Liam had left for the city, claiming he had meetings with investors to capitalize on the positive momentum. I stood in the foyer, watching the dust motes dance in the shaft of light coming through the stained glass window above the door. The house felt like a museum after closing hours. Grand, imposing, and completely hollow. Inner monologue. They are so confident now, so reckless. They think they have won. They think the golden goose has finally laid the egg. So they left the cage door unlocked. I turned my gaze toward the east wing of the house. At the end of the long hallway, past the gallery of ancestors who all seemed to stare at me with disapproval, lay the study of Arthur Walker, my late father-in-law. It was the one room in the house I was explicitly forbidden to enter. Arthur's sanctuary, Patricia called it. She claimed she kept it exactly as he left it out of respect. But I had always noticed how Liam would sweat whenever he had to go in there to retrieve a document. I walked down the hallway. The floorboards creaked under my feet, sounding like gunshots in the silence. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew the housekeeper, Maria, was in the basement doing laundry. I had maybe 45 minutes before anyone returned. I reached the double oak doors. The brass handles were cold. I tried the left one. Locked. I tried the right one. It turned. Liam had been careless. His relief over the grandson had made him sloppy. I slipped inside and closed the door softly behind me. The room smelled of stale cigar smoke, old leather, and dust. Heavy velvet curtains were drawn, casting the room in a perpetual twilight. The walls were lined with books that looked like they had never been read, their spines uncracked and pristine. In the center of the room sat a massive mahogany desk, cluttered with stacks of paper. I approached the desk, my hands trembling. I felt like a thief in my own home. But then I remembered the bone broth. I remembered the way they looked at me, not as a wife or a daughter, but as a vessel. I was not stealing. I was surviving. I started sifting through the piles on top of the desk. Most of it was junk mail, invitations to charity galas, and glossy brochures for yachts. Inner monologue. Yachts? They are looking at yachts? Liam told me last week we could not afford to fix the heating in the guest cottage. I opened the top drawer. Pens, paper clips, a seemingly endless supply of prescription bottles for Patricia's anxiety. Nothing. I opened the bottom drawer. It was locked. I looked around the room. Where would a man like Liam hide a key? He was not creative. He was a creature of habit. I lifted the heavy bronze bust of Julius Caesar that sat on the corner of the desk. There it was, a small silver key. I unlocked the bottom drawer. It slid open with a heavy, expensive sound. Inside, there was no clutter, just a single, thick red folder. I lifted it out. The weight of it felt ominous. I sat in Arthur Walker's leather chair, which swiveled slightly under my weight, and opened the folder. The first document was a letter from First National Bank of Connecticut. The header was stamped in red ink. Final notice of foreclosure. I read the text, my breath catching in my throat. Dear Mr. Walker, regarding the property at 112 Highland Avenue, Saoyutingholing, 2 hash is greater than outstanding mortgage payments, totaling $340,000. Saoyu Jinghao Ling. 2 hash is greater than failure to remit payment by November 1st will result in immediate seizure of the property. I flipped the page. Another letter, this one from American Express. Account suspended. Outstanding balance, $85,000. I flipped again. A lawsuit from a construction company for unpaid renovations. I lean on the Tesla. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the paper. They were not just having cash flow issues. As Liam sometimes hinted, they were destitute. The dynasty was a hollow shell. They were living on credit, Latif fumas, and the reputation of a dead man. Inner monologue. We are broke. We are completely, utterly broke. The food in the fridge, the gas in the car, the roof over my head. It is all borrowed. It is all a mirage. But why the obsession with the baby? Why did it have to be a boy? I dug deeper into the folder. At the very back, beneath the mountain of debt, was a document bound in blue paper. It was older than the rest. The paper slightly yellowed. Last Will and Testament of Arthur James Walker II. I skipped the legal jargon, my eyes scanning for the relevant clauses. I found it on page 14, under the section titled The Walker Family Trust. The principal sum of the trust, valued at $50 million, shall remain in the custody of Jensen and Associates until such time as a direct male heir is born to my son, Liam Arthur Walker. I read it again, direct male heir, and then the kicker. In the event that no male heir is produced within 5 years of my passing, or if the line produces a female heir first, the entirety of the trust shall be dissolved and donated to the Walker Foundation for Historic Preservation. The family shall receive no further stipend. I checked the date of Arthur's death, October 30th. 5 years ago, the deadline was approaching, and the condition was absolute, or if the line produces a female heir first. If I gave birth to a girl, the money would vanish forever. The room seemed to spin. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Arthur Walker, a man I had only met twice, was controlling us from the grave with his archaic, misogynistic demands. But Patricia and Liam, So Yu Jinghao, Ling, 2 is greater than they were the true monsters. They knew. They had known all along. They were not excited about a grandson because they wanted to carry on the family name. They did not care about legacy or love. They needed a key to unlock the vault. My baby was nothing more than a biological, personal identification number code to them. And if I had told them the truth, if I had told them it was a girl, Patricia's voice from the clinic hallway echoed in my mind. We cut our losses. We divorce her. Xiao Jinghao Ling. 2 is greater than. We cannot afford a useless mouth to feed. They would have thrown me out. They would have left me and my daughter on the street while they scrambled to find another woman. Another womb. Before the deadline ran out, a wave of nausea rolled over me, but it was quickly replaced by a hard rage. It started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips. Steadying them, I reached into the pocket of my maternity dress and pulled out my smartphone. Inner monologue. You want a game? Fine, I will give you a game. But I am not playing by your rules anymore. I began to photograph every single page. I took clear, high-resolution photos of the foreclosure notice, the credit card debt, the lawsuit, and, most importantly, the will. Click, click, click. I was capturing the evidence of their fraud. They had lured me into this marriage, into this pregnancy, under false pretenses. This was entrapment. Suddenly, I heard the sound of gravel crunching on the driveway. A car door slammed. Esme, darling, I am home. Patricia's voice drifted up from the foyer, shrill and cheerful. I froze. I was on the 2nd floor, in the east wing. If she came up the stairs, she would see the study door was ajar. I shoved the papers back into the red folder. I locked the drawer. I placed the key back under the bust of Julius Caesar. Esme, are you napping? Her footsteps were clicking on the marble stairs. She was coming up. I looked around frantically. I could not go out into the hallway without being seen. The window. No, I was 7 months pregnant. I could not climb out a window. I scanned the room. There was a second door, one that led to the master bedroom's walk-in closet. It was usually kept locked from the bedroom side. But if I was lucky, Xiao Yu Jinghao Ling, Jinghao Dayu. I ran to the door and twisted the handle. It turned. I slipped through into the darkness of the closet, smelling of cedar and Liam's expensive colognes. I closed the door just as I heard the steady door handle jiggle. I held my breath, pressing my hand over my mouth. Odd. I heard Patricia mutter from inside the study. I could have sworn I felt a draft. I stood in the dark, surrounded by Liam's suits, clutching my phone like a weapon. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might bruise my ribs. I had the truth now. I knew exactly what they were, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I was going to play the role of the perfect, incubating wife. I was going to let them buy their blue furniture and paint their blue walls. I was going to let them dream of their $50 million. And then I was going to watch them lose everything. The drive to the Greenwich Country Club was quiet. It was the kind of silence that usually precedes a car accident. Liam kept his eyes fixed on the road, his knuckles white on the leather steering wheel. I adjusted the sash of my dress. It was a pale lemon yellow, made of soft chiffon. We had agreed on yellow. We had shaken hands on it. A neutral, calm, intimate gathering. Just family and a few close friends. I needed calm. Since finding the documents in the study, my blood pressure had been creeping up steadily. I felt like I was walking on a wire, suspended over a pit of vipers. "You are going to love what Mom has done," Liam said suddenly, his voice tight. She really pulled out all the stops. I looked at him sharply. We agreed on simple. Liam, we agreed on yellow. He did not answer. He just turned the car into the long, winding driveway of the club. As we pulled up to the main entrance, my heart stopped. There were valet attendants wearing blue ties. There were balloons, thousands of them, arching over the entrance. Every single one was blue. Electric blue, navy blue, baby blue. And there was a banner, a massive, vinyl banner stretching across the portico that read, "Welcome the heir, baby walker." Inner monologue. This is not a shower. This is a coronation, and I am not the queen. I am just the carrier pigeon delivering the crown. Liam hurried around to open my door, but I was already stepping out, my legs feeling like lead. "Esme, wait," Liam hissed, grabbing my elbow. "Just smile. There are people here, important people." I pulled my arm away and walked toward the double doors. The ballroom exploded with noise and light. It was not a party. It was a press conference. There were photographers with blinding flashbulbs. There were cameramen with heavy equipment. The room was packed with people I did not know. Women in stiff hats, men in business suits, and strangers holding clipboards. And the color? It was suffocating. The tablecloths were blue velvet. The centerpieces were blue hydrangeas. Even the champagne in the flutes had been dyed a sickly shade of azure. Patricia stood in the center of the room, holding court. She wore a royal blue gown that looked like something a mother of the bride would wear, not a grandmother. When she saw me, her face lit up with a predatory delight. "There she is," Patricia shouted, raising her glass. "The woman of the hour." The crowd applauded. It was a polite, heavy sound. I stood frozen in the doorway in my yellow dress. I looked like a bruise on a clear sky. I was the only thing in the room that was not blue. Patricia rushed over, flanked by two women I recognized as local socialites. "Why are you wearing yellow?" Patricia whispered through her teeth as she leaned in to kiss my cheek airily. "You look like a canary." "I told you the theme was royal ascendance." "We agreed on neutral," I whispered back, my voice trembling. I changed my mind. She dismissed me instantly, turning me toward a cameraman. "Smile. Darling, this is going live on the blog for Petite Elite. We have a sponsorship deal with that stroller company over there. She pointed to a display in the corner. A brand representative was standing next to a pram, waving. Inner monologue. She sold us. She sold the baby before she is even born. I am not a person to her. I am a marketing asset. My breath started coming in short, shallow gasps. The room felt hot. The smell of expensive lilies and shrimp cocktail was nauseating. Come, Patricia commanded. Time to cut the cake. She dragged me toward a stage. Yes, a stage. In the center stood a monstrosity, a 5-tier cake covered in blue fondant, topped with a crown made of spun sugar. It was taller than I was. Liam appeared at my side, handing me a silver knife. His hand was clamped over my waist, his fingers digging into my ribs. Just cut it, Esme, he muttered in my ear. Do not make a scene. The bank manager is watching. I looked out at the sea of faces. They were all staring at me, judging me, estimating the value of the fetus inside me. I felt the lie sitting heavy in my stomach. They were cheering for a boy. They were cheering for $50 million. If they knew it was a girl, they would tear me apart. The room began to spin. The blue balloons looked like they were closing in, trying to suffocate me. Cut the cake, someone shouted. For the air, someone else cheered. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud break. It was a quiet, final severance of my sanity. I looked at the cake. It represented everything. The greed, the deception, the erasure of my daughter's existence. I did not cut it. I dropped the knife. It clattered loudly on the wooden stage. Esme? Patricia asked, her smile faltering. I placed both hands on the middle tier of the cake. The fondant was cool and sticky under my palms. With a guttural scream that seemed to come from the bottom of my soul, I shoved. I put my entire body weight into it. The cake wobbled, tipped, and then crashed spectacularly onto the floor. Blue frosting exploded everywhere. It splattered onto Patricia's gown. It covered the front row of guests. The sugar crown shattered into 1,000 pieces. The room went dead silent. I stood there, panting, my hands covered in blue dye. I felt wild. I felt free. Patricia stood frozen for a second, looking at the ruin of her perfect production. Then, she did something brilliant. She clutched her chest and sank to her knees, managing to look like a tragic opera heroine. Oh my God, she wailed, pointing a shaking finger at me. She is trying to kill the baby. She has lost her mind. Liam grabbed my shoulders, shaking me hard. What is wrong with you? He screamed, his face twisted in genuine fury. You are crazy. You are completely insane. Flashbulbs pop. I could hear the rapid-fire click of shutters. They were documenting my breakdown. I looked around. I saw the guests whispering behind their hands. I saw the pity and the disgust in their eyes. Inner monologue. They do not see a mother protecting her child. They see a hysterical woman destroying a dynasty. Patricia is winning. She is turning the narrative against me in real time. Get her out of here, Patricia sobbed, being helped up by the stroller salesman. Get her home before she hurts herself. Liam dragged me off the stage. I did not fight him. I felt drained, empty. I let him pull me through the back exit, past the kitchen staff who stared at me with wide eyes. As we burst out into the cool air of the parking lot, I realized I was trembling uncontrollably. I looked down at my hands. They were stained deep blue. It looked like blood. Blue blood. You are going to pay for this. Esme. Liam spat as he shoved me into the car. Do you have any idea how embarrassed I am? You are sick. You need help. He slammed the door as he walked around to the driver's side. I saw him pull out his phone. He was texting someone. I leaned my head against the cold glass of the window. I had wanted to make a statement. I had wanted to ruin their party. But as the car sped away, leaving the wreckage behind, I realized I had made a terrible mistake. I had just given them exactly what they needed. I had given them proof that I was unfit. The click of the deadbolt sliding into place was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It echoed through the master suite, bouncing off the silk wallpaper and the high ceilings, sealing me in. I was not just grounded. I was a prisoner. I sat on the edge of the California king bed, my hands resting on my knees. The blue dye from the cake was still stained into my cuticles, looking like frostbite. The house was quiet now. The party was over. The guests had gone home to gossip about the crazy pregnant woman who destroyed her own baby shower, while the staff scrubbed blue frosting out of the carpets downstairs. I stared at the door. I knew better than to rattle the handle. I knew better than to scream. Screaming was what they wanted. Screaming would only prove their point. Inner monologue. They want a mad woman? I will not give them the satisfaction. I need to be stone. I need to be ice. An hour later, the lock turned again. Patricia entered. She carried a silver tray with a porcelain teapot and a single cup. She had changed out of her ruined gown into a pristine white cashmere robe. She looked like an angel of death. Drink this. Esme, she said softly, placing the tray on the nightstand. It is chamomile and valerian root. It will help you sleep. You have had a Xiaoyu Dinghao Ling. 2# is greater than hysterical episode. I am not hysterical. Patricia, I said, my voice steady. I am angry. There is a difference. Patricia Seahill, a sound of infinite patience. You attacked a cake. Darling, you were screaming incoherently. Liam is downstairs speaking with Dr. Evans on the phone right now. We are all very worried about your stability. She poured the tea, steam curled up, carrying a scent that was too sweet, too heavy. Drink. She commanded, I will not leave until you do. We cannot have you stressing the grandson. I lifted the cup. I feigned a sip, letting the hot liquid merely touch my lips before pulling it away. I did this 3 times. Good. She nodded. Now, lie down. Sleep is the only cure for what you have. She took the cup, placed it back on the tray, and walked to the door. We are doing this for you. Esme, she said, her hand on the light switch. One day, you will thank us. The room plunged into darkness. The lock clicked again. I waited. I counted to 100 in the dark. Then I moved. I crept to the bathroom and spat the small amount of saliva and tea into the sink. Then I went back to the bed. I arranged the pillows under the duvet to look like a sleeping form. I curled up on the rug on the far side of the bed, hidden by the heavy drape of the quilt. I had to know. I had to know what the next move was. 20 minutes later, the door opened. A beam of light from the hallway cut across the room. 2 silhouettes entered. Is she out? Liam's voice whispered. It was shaking, like a light. Patricia replied, I put enough crushed sedatives in that tea to knock out a horse. She will not wake up until tomorrow noon. They walked further into the room. I held my breath, pressing my face into the thick carpet. I could see their shoes. Patricia's white slippers. Liam's leather loafers. This is a disaster. Mom, Liam hissed. The video is already on Twitter. The caption says, Real Housewife Meltdown. The investors are going to see this. If they think my wife is unstable, they might pull the bridge loan. Stop whining. Liam, Patricia snapped. This is not a disaster. This is a gift. A gift? She destroyed the party. She gave us evidence, Patricia said. Her voice was cold, precise, and terrifyingly calm. Think about it. We have the video of her violence. We have the testimony of 50 guests. And I spoke to Jensen tonight. He says we can subpoena her old therapy records from New York. Remember when she had that burnout 3 years ago? The anxiety medication? The stress leave? 小于井号零. 2 hash is greater than yeah? We combine that. Patricia continued. With the video, postpartum psychosis. That is the narrative. As soon as that boy is born, we file for emergency custody. We have her committed for observation. Section 12. By the time she gets out, if she gets out, we will have full legal guardianship of the heir. My heart stopped. It literally felt like it stopped beating. Inner monologue. They are not just going to divorce me. They are going to erase me. They are going to lock me away in a padded room, drugged and drooling, while they raise my daughter to be their cash cow. Can we do that? Liam asked. It seems. 小于井号零. 2 hash is greater than extreme. Do you want to lose the house? Liam? Patricia's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. Do you want to work at a gas station? Because that is your future if we do not get that $50 million. She is a liability. She is dangerous. We are protecting the child. Okay. Liam breathed. Okay. As soon as she goes into labor, we call the lawyer. Exactly. Now, let us go. I cannot stand the smell of her in here. They turned and left. The door closed. The lock clicked. I lay on the floor for a long time. I should have been crying. I should have been terrified. A normal woman would be curled up in a ball, sobbing for her mother. But something inside me had broken. And when it broke, it did not shatter into dust. It shattered into a blade. I sat up in the darkness. My eyes adjusted to the gloom. I looked at my hands. They were steady. For months, I had been playing defense. I had been hiding the gender, hiding my fear, hiding my knowledge of their bankruptcy. I had been trying to survive until the birth, hoping I could just take my baby and run. But I realized now that running was impossible. They would hunt me down. They had the money, or at least the appearance of it, and the connections to destroy me. If I wanted to save my daughter, I could not just be a mother. I had to be a monster. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the moonlit grounds of the estate. It looked like a prison yard. Inner monologue. You want to play the victim card. Patricia, you want to paint me as the villain? Fine. I will be the villain. I will be the worst nightmare you have ever had. I walked to the nightstand and picked up the cold cup of drugged tea. I walked to the potted ficus plant in the corner and poured the liquid into the soil. Drink up. I whispered to the plant. I went back to bed. But I did not sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, plotting. I replayed every conversation, every insult, every lie. I cataloged them. I organized them. They wanted a show? I would give them a finale they would never forget. The old Esme, the one who wanted to be liked, the one who wanted to be a good wife, died in that room that night. And the woman who woke up the next morning was someone else entirely. Someone who was ready to burn the house down, with everyone inside it. The calendar on the wall was the only thing that proved time was actually moving. Without it, I would have been lost in a sea of identical, suffocating gray days. It was mid-October. The leaves outside the high windows of the Walker estate were turning brilliant shades of crimson and gold. a cruel reminder that the world was changing, living, and breathing while I remained frozen in amber. I was 36 weeks pregnant. My body felt less like my own and more like a swollen vessel that I was dragging around. My ankles were the size of grapefruits. My back ached with a dull, throbbing rhythm that never ceased. But physical pain was a luxury I could not afford to focus on. I had to focus on the game. The house had transformed. It was no longer a home. It was a minimum security prison with crown molding and marble floors. Patricia had explained the new rules with a smile that was terrifying in its warmth. She called it the nesting protocol. For the safety of the air, she said, I needed absolute tranquility. That meant no internet, to avoid the stress of the blue light and the radiation. That meant no phone, because the doctor apparently said cellular signals could interfere with the fetal heart rate. It was junk science, a lie so transparent it was almost insulting, but I had no way to contest it. My world had shrunk to the four walls of the master bedroom and the nursery. Inner monologue. They think they have cut me off from the world. They think silence will break me. They do not realize that silence is where I do my best work. The door clicked open. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. Patricia breezed in, carrying a tray. She was wearing a crisp linen blouse and pearls, looking every inch the benevolent grandmother. Good morning, Sleeping Beauty, she chirped. I have your special oatmeal. She set the tray down on my lap. The oatmeal was gray and lumpy, smelling faintly of bitter almonds. Next to it sat 2 large white pills. Vitamins, she said, watching me closely. For the bone density, we cannot have the little prince stealing all your calcium. Can we? I looked at the pills. I knew what they were. They were sedatives, mild enough to keep me compliant, strong enough to make my thoughts fuzzy and my reflexes slow. She wanted me docile. She wanted a cow that chewed its cud and waited for the slaughter. I picked up the spoon. Thank you, Patricia, I said, keeping my voice flat and defeated. You are so thoughtful. I forced a bite of oatmeal into my mouth. I chewed slowly. Patricia stood at the foot of the bed, her hands clasped, watching me swallow. She did not leave until the bowl was half empty and the pills were gone, but I had perfected the art of the cheek. I tucked the pills deep into the pocket of my cheek, near the back molars, suppressing the urge to gag as the bitter coating began to dissolve. Rest now, she said, taking the tray. Liam will be up later to read to the belly. As soon as the door clicked shut and the lock slid home, I scrambled out of bed. I moved as fast as my heavy body would allow, waddling into the bathroom and turning on the faucet, full blast to mask the sound. I spit the half-dissolved pills into the toilet. Then, I shoved 2 fingers down my throat. The retching was violent and painful. My stomach contracted, fighting against the baby who kicked in protest. I threw up the oatmeal, the bile, and the fear. I heaved until there was nothing left but dry, rasping coughs. I flushed the toilet and slumped against the cold porcelain tub, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand. Tears streamed down my face, but I wiped them away angrily. Inner monologue. Not today. You do not get to poison me today. I need to be sharp. I need to be awake. I spent the next hour pacing the room to keep my blood flowing. I had found a loose floorboard near the radiator in the corner. Underneath it, I had started a stash. Crackers I had stolen from the tray when Patricia looked away. A small bottle of water I had refilled from the bathroom tap. And my most prized possession, I knelt down, groaning with the effort, and pried up the board. There it was, an old digital voice recorder. I had found it 3 weeks ago in a box of Liam's old college things that had been left in the back of the walk-in closet. It was ancient, a relic from his journalism elective he took a decade ago. It had 2 batteries left. I pressed the play button, checking the battery life. 1 bar. I had to be careful. This recorder was my lifeline. It was the only witness I had. I sat on the floor, holding the small black device. I had already recorded 3 conversations. One was Liam crying on the phone to a loan shark, begging for an extension. One was Patricia screaming at the housekeeper for buying the wrong brand of detergent, calling her filthy names that made my skin crawl. But I needed the smoking gun. I needed them to admit the plan. I hid the recorder in the pocket of my maternity robe. At noon, the door opened again. It was Liam. He looked terrible. His face was gray, and he had dark circles under his eyes. The stress of the looming bankruptcy was eating him alive. He came in holding a book of children's stories. "Hey," he said softly, not meeting my eyes. "How are you feeling?" "I am lonely." "Liam," I said, sitting in the rocking chair by the window. "Can I please have my phone? Just for 5 minutes? I want to call my mother." Liam flinched. He walked over to the crib, the blue crib, and ran his hand along the rail. "You know what Mom said? Esme, the doctor said you need total isolation. It is for the stress." "You mean the stress you caused?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle, almost curious. "The stress of the bankruptcy?" Liam spun around. His eyes were wide with panic. "Shh, keep your voice down." "Why?" I asked. "Are you afraid the baby will hear that her father is a fraud?" "His boy," Liam corrected me automatically. "His father. And we are not frauds. We are just Sauteng-Holing. 2# is greater than liquidating some assets. Once the trust fund clears next month, everything will be fine. We will be back on top." He walked over to me and knelt down. He put his hands on my knees. His palms were sweaty. "Esme, please, just hang in there. Once the baby is born, I promise, things will go back to normal. We will go on a vacation, just the 3 of us." Inner monologue. He is lying. He looks at me and he sees a winning lottery ticket, not a wife. He plans to cash me in and throw away the stub. I leaned forward, my hand slipping into my pocket. I found the record button. I pressed it. "Liam," I whispered, making my voice tremble. "I am scared. I had a nightmare that you and Patricia were going to take the baby away, that you were going to send me to a hospital." Liam froze. He looked away, focusing on the carpet. "That is crazy. Esme, why would you think that?" "Because I heard you." I lied. "I heard you whispering. You said I was unfit. You said you would use the video from the shower to commit me." Liam stood up abruptly. He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, it is just a contingency. Okay? Mom, Sauteng-Holing. 2# is greater than Mom thinks you are unstable. That display at the party was psychotic. Esme, we have to protect the family. If you act crazy, we have to do what is best for the child. So you admit it?" I pressed, my heart hammering against my ribs. "You are planning to commit me?" "It is not a plan," he snapped, his voice rising. "It is a legal strategy. If you cooperate, maybe it will not happen. But we need that money. Esme, we need the trust. And the trust requires a stable environment for the heir. If you cannot provide that, then yes, we will take custody. We have the papers drawn up. We have the doctors lined up. So just Saoyuting howling. 2 hash is greater than stop fighting us. Saoyuting howling. 2 click. I pressed the stop button inside my pocket. Saoyuting howling. 2. I had it. Inner monologue. Legal strategy. Papers drawn up. Doctors lined up. You just signed your own death warrant. Liam. I let out a long, shaky breath and slumped back into the chair. I closed my eyes. Okay, Liam, I said softly. I understand. I will be good. He looked relieved. He actually looked like he believed me. He bent down and kissed my forehead. His lips felt like dry paper. Good girl, he said. I will tell Mom you are calming down. He left the room. I waited until his footsteps faded down the hall. Then I pulled the recorder out. I checked the file. It was saved. I went back to the loose floorboard and buried the recorder beneath the insulation. It was safe there. The rest of the day passed in a blur of hunger and tension. My dinner was brought by Patricia. Boiled chicken and spinach. Again with the vitamins. I repeated the purging ritual. Though it was getting harder, my throat was raw, and I was exhausted. Night fell. The house creaked in the wind. I lay in the darkness, my hand on my belly. The baby kicked. A strong, sharp jab against my ribs. I am sorry, I whispered to her. I am sorry you have to feel this. I am sorry your first taste of the world is this bitterness. But I promise you, it ends soon. I rolled onto my side, staring at the moonlight slicing through the heavy curtains. I was weak. I was hungry. I was a prisoner in a house that wanted to consume me. But as I touched the spot on the floor where the recorder lay hidden, I smiled. A cold, grim smile. They thought they were waiting for a prince. They thought they were waiting for a check. They had no idea they were waiting for a storm. And when the water broke, I would drown them all. The air in the master bedroom was stale, recycled, and thick with the scent of lilies. Patricia insisted on fresh lilies every day. To me, they did not smell like luxury. They smelled like a funeral parlor. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. My due date was still 2 weeks away. But my body felt heavy, low, and restless. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, folding and unfolding a small yellow sock I had managed to hide under my pillow. It was my only act of rebellion, a tiny beacon of truth in a sea of lies. The lock turned. Patricia entered. But she was not carrying a food tray this time. She was carrying a leather portfolio. Liam trailed behind her, looking like a man walking to the gallows. He refused to meet my eyes, focusing intently on the pattern of the Persian rug. Esme, darling, Patricia said, her voice tight and hurried. We have some paperwork to clear up before the big day. Just routine legalities. She placed the portfolio on the bedspread and clicked a gold pen. Sign here, here, an initial here. I looked down at the document. The text was dense, but the header was clear enough. Durable power of attorney and pre-birth custody agreement. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine that had nothing to do with the drafty window. What is this? I asked, my hand instinctively covering my belly. It just grants us the authority to make medical decisions for the heir if you are. Saoyuting howling. 2 hash is greater than incapacitated, Patricia said smoothly, and it establishes the trust as the primary guardian. It is standard procedure for assets of this magnitude. Assets, not a baby. Assets. I am not signing that, I said. My voice was quiet, but it did not shake. Patricia's smile vanished. It dropped off her face like a mask unhinged. Sign the papers. Esme, do not be difficult. We do not have time for your moods. I said no. I pushed the portfolio away. It slid across the silk duvet and fell onto the floor with a heavy thud. Patricia snapped. She lunged forward, her face twisted into a mask of pure, entitled rage. She grabbed my upper arm, her fingers digging into my flesh like talons. You ungrateful little gutter rat, she hissed, spit flying from her mouth. We saved you. We gave you a life you could never dream of. You will sign this paper, or I will make sure you never see the outside of a psychiatric ward. Mom? Stop, Liam shouted, stepping forward but not interfering. You are hurting me. I screamed, trying to pull away. Patricia shook me. She was surprisingly strong, fueled by the desperation of a woman watching $50 million slip through her fingers. Sign it. Sign it now. I wrenched my body back with all my strength. I stumbled, my foot catching on the edge of the rug. I fell backward, hitting the side of the heavy oak nightstand hard. A sharp, blinding pain tore through my lower abdomen. It was not the dull ache I was used to. It was a shearing force, like a lightning bolt striking from the inside out. I gasped, clutching my stomach. Then I felt it, a warm, uncontrollable gush of fluid soaking through my dress and onto the pristine cream carpet. The room went silent. Patricia stared at the wet stain spreading on the rug. She did not look at me. She looked at the carpet. Oh God, she muttered. That is silk. My water broke. I screamed, the pain coming in a second wave that made my vision blur. Liam, help me. Liam looked paralyzed. He looked from his mother to me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Get the car. Liam, Patricia barked, snapping back into general mode. Now, and bring the towels, the dark ones. Do not stain the leather seats. Inner monologue. She's worried about the car seats. I am going into labor, possibly injured, and she is worried about the upholstery. The next hour was a blur of chaotic motion and searing pain. The drive to the hospital was a nightmare. I was in the back seat, breathing through contractions that were coming fast. Too fast. Patricia was in the passenger seat, not looking back at me, but furiously texting on her phone. I heard her voice, sharp and commanding. Yes, notify the press. Tell them the air is coming early. Yes, bring the blue balloons to the very important person suite. No, I do not care if it is against policy. I am Patricia Walker. We arrived at the private wing of the Greenwich Hospital. I was wheeled in, not through the emergency room, but through a private entrance. The nurses looked terrified. They knew who Patricia was. I was transferred to a delivery bed in a suite that looked more like a hotel room than a hospital. There were mahogany cabinets, a flat-screen television, and a waiting area with leather sofas, and it was already being decorated. While the nurses were hooking me up to the monitors, an assistant was setting up a table with blue cupcakes and a boy banner. Dr. Evans rushed in, looking flustered. Mistress Walker, please, we need space to work, he told Patricia, who was hovering over the fetal monitor. I am not leaving, she declared, crossing her arms. I am the grandmother. I am paying for this wing. I stay. Liam stood in the corner, pale and sweating, holding the unsigned legal documents. He looked like a ghost. The pain was consuming me now. It was a rhythmic, crushing pressure that threatened to split me in two. Do you want the epidural, Esme? Dr. Evans asked, checking my dilation. You are already at 7 centimeters. It is going very fast. I looked at Patricia, She was watching the monitor, her eyes gleaming with greed. She was practically drooling over the heart rate line. Inner monologue. I want to be awake. I want to feel everything. I need to be sharp when the world comes crashing down on them. I need to see the exact moment the light goes out in her eyes. No, I gritted out, gripping the bed rails until my knuckles turned white. No drugs. I want to be present. Are you sure? It will be intense. I am sure. The next 2 hours were an eternity of agony. I roared. I cried. I felt like an animal caught in a trap, gnawing its own leg off to survive. Patricia did not offer a hand. She did not offer a word of comfort. She stood by the window, on the phone with the bank, whispering promises that money was on the way. He is coming, she whispered into the phone. The funds will be transferred by tomorrow morning. Just hold the foreclosure. Yes, a boy, guaranteed. The contraction peaked. I screamed. A raw, guttural sound that tore through my throat. Okay, Esme, Dr. Evans said, his voice tense. You are fully dilated. On the next contraction, I need you to push. This is it, Patricia announced, clapping her hands. Liam, get over here. Get the camera. Liam stumbled forward, holding a video camera. He looked like he was about to vomit. Record the birth, Patricia commanded. We need proof of the time of delivery for the trust. Inner monologue. Capture it. Liam, capture every second. You are filming your own funeral. Sao Yu Ting Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than I pushed. The pain was blinding. It felt like the universe was collapsing into a single point of fire. I pushed with everything I had. I pushed with the anger of 9 months of silence. I pushed with the rage of the bone broth, the blue paint, the insults, the threats. I pushed for my freedom. One more, Dr. Evans urged. The head is out. One big push. Esme. I took a deep breath. I looked at Patricia one last time. She was leaning forward, her eyes wide, a triumphant, greedy smile plastered on her face. She looked like a witch hovering over a cauldron. I closed my eyes and pushed. I felt a sudden release. The pressure vanished, replaced by a strange, slippery emptiness. Silence filled the room. For 3 seconds, there was no sound, no cry, just the hum of the machines and the heavy panting of my own breath. Then, a wail broke the air. It was high, strong, and furious. Oh, look at that set of lungs, Dr. Evans said. Lifting the baby up, Patricia stepped forward, her hands outstretched, ignoring me completely. My grandson, she cried out. Give him to me. Dr. Evans paused. He was wiping the baby down. He looked at the baby. Then he looked at Patricia. Then he looked at the chart. Then he looked at me. His face went pale. He cleared his throat. Mistress Walker, he said, his voice hesitant. Give him to me, Patricia demanded. Reaching over the sterile field, Dr. Evans stepped back, shielding the baby. It is not a him, Mistress Walker. The room froze. The air conditioning seemed to stop humming. The world stood still. What did you say? Patricia whispered. Her voice was low, dangerous. Dr. Evans turned the baby around, lifting her slightly so the gender was undeniable. It is a girl, he said softly. You have a beautiful, healthy granddaughter. Patricia stared. She stared at the baby's legs. She stared for what felt like a lifetime. No, she said. She shook her head. A jerky, mechanical motion. No, that is wrong. Check again. It is a girl. Patricia. Dr. Evans repeated firmly. You are lying. Patricia screamed. Her voice cracked, shattering into a shriek that sounded inhuman. She lunged at the doctor. You swapped them. You are hiding him. Where is the boy? Where is the heir? Liam dropped the camera. It hit the floor with a crack, the lens shattering. A girl? Liam whispered. He looked at me, his eyes wide with horror. Esme? You said, Sayu Jinghaoling, R. Jinghao Dayu. I pulled myself up on the pillows. I was exhausted, bleeding, and shaking, but I had never felt more powerful in my life. I reached out my arms. Give me my daughter, I said. The nurse, looking terrified of Patricia, quickly wrapped the baby in a generic hospital blanket, not the blue one Patricia had brought, and handed her to me. She was warm. She was heavy. She smelled of blood and life. I held her against my chest, feeling her heart beat against mine. I looked up at them. Patricia was hyperventilating. She was clutching the front of her pearl necklace, her chest heaving. You lied, she rasped, pointing a shaking finger at me. You told us, Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling, 2 hashes greater than you said. Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling, R. Jinghao Dayu. I lied, I said calmly. My voice was raspy, but it filled the room. I lied because I knew if I told you the truth, you would have thrown us away. I lied to survive you. You, Xiaoyu Jinghaoling, 2 hash is greater than you, bitch. Patricia screamed. She took a step toward me, her hand raised to strike. Dr. Evans stepped in between us. That is enough, he shouted. Security, get security in here now. Patricia stopped. She looked at Liam. Liam, do something, she gasped, her face turning a terrifying shade of gray. The trust? Xiaoyu Jinghaoling, 2 hash is greater than the deadline. Xiaoyu Jinghaoling, 2 hash is greater than the bank. Xiaoyu Jinghaoling, R. Jinghao Dayu. Liam did not move. He was staring at the wall, sliding slowly down until he was crouching on the floor, his head in his hands. It is over. Mom, he moaned. It is all over. Patricia turned back to me. Her eyes were bulging. The veins in her neck were throbbing. You ruined us, she hissed. You ungrateful. Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling, 2 hash is greater than filthy. Xiaoyu Jinghao Ling, R. Jinghao Dayu. Suddenly, her words cut off. Her eyes rolled back in her head. She clutched her left arm, her mouth opening in a silent scream. She swayed, then collapsed. She hit the linoleum floor with a sickening thud, landing right next to the shattered camera and the "It is a boy" banner that had fallen from the table. Mom, Liam screamed, crawling toward her. Code Blue, Dr. Evans shouted. Get the crash cart. We have a cardiac arrest. Nurses swarmed the room. They pushed Liam aside. They ripped open Patricia's blouse, sending pearls scattering across the floor like hail. They began chest compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. I sat there, holding my daughter. I stroked her tiny head, which was covered in dark fuzz. I watched them work on Patricia. I watched the woman who had tried to turn my child into a paycheck now fighting for her own life. I felt nothing. No pity, no fear, no guilt. The rhythm of the chest compressions was the only sound in the room besides my baby's soft whimpers. Inner monologue. Look at you, Patricia. You wanted a heartbeat so bad. Now you are begging for your own. The defibrillator whined. Xiaoyu Jinghaoling, 2 hash is greater than clear. Her body jerked. I looked down at my daughter. She opened her eyes. They were dark, deep, and knowing. "Hello?" I whispered to her, ignoring the chaos, the shouting, and the dying woman on the floor 3 feet away. "Welcome to the world. We are going to be just fine." The recovery room was quiet, bathed in the soft, artificial glow of the monitors. In my arms, my daughter slept. She was wrapped in a simple white flannel blanket provided by the hospital, not the cashmere monogrammed swaddle Patricia had specially ordered from Paris. She looked perfect. She looked like the truth. I had named her Phoenix. It felt appropriate. She was rising from the ashes of the fire I had just set. The door pushed open. It was not a nurse. It was Liam. He looked like a man who had aged 20 years in 20 minutes. His expensive Italian shirt was rumpled and stained with sweat. His hair, usually gelled to perfection, was standing up in erratic tufts. He did not look at the baby. He looked at the floor. "She is in the cardiac intensive care unit," he said, his voice hollow. "They stabilized her. But she is Xiao Ling. 2# is greater than she is weak." The doctor said the stress was too much. I adjusted the blanket around Phoenix's shoulder. I did not feel a flicker of sympathy. "That is unfortunate," I said calmly. Liam looked up at me, his eyes rimmed with red. There was a mix of confusion and betrayal in his gaze, like a dog that had been kicked by its master. "Why? Esme?" he whispered. "Why did you lie? We could have Xiao Ling. 2# is greater than we could have figured something out. If we knew earlier, we could have tried to negotiate with the bank. We could have Xiao Ling. Jinghao Dayu." He trailed off. He knew it was a lie. There was no negotiating with a $50 million hole in the ground. I reached into my overnight bag, the one I had packed myself, hidden deep in the closet behind my winter coats. I pulled out a thick manila envelope. I held it out to him. "What is this?" he asked, not taking it. "It is the end, Liam," I said. He took it with a trembling hand. He opened the clasp and slid out the documents. On top was a petition for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and fraud. Underneath that was a restraining order, and underneath that was a flash drive. I sent the contents of that drive to Attorney Jensen exactly 10 minutes ago. I told him, my voice steady and cold. "It contains photographs of the foreclosure notices you hid. It contains audio recordings of you and your mother conspiring to commit me to a mental institution to steal my child. And it contains the video of Patricia admitting she bribed the zoning commissioner last year." Liam dropped the papers. They scattered across the linoleum floor like dead leaves. "You, Xiao Ling, 2# is greater than you recorded us?" He breathed. I did not stop there. I continued. "I also sent a press release to the Greenwich Time, the New York Post, and Gawker. I titled it, 'The Walker House of Cards.'" Liam staggered back, hitting the wall. He looked as if I had physically struck him. "You cannot do that," he stammered. "The scandal, Xiao Ling, 2# is greater than it will ruin us. It is already done," I said, nodding toward the television mounted on the wall. "Turn it on." Liam fumbled for the remote. The screen flickered to life. It was tuned to a local news channel. The banner at the bottom of the screen read, "Breaking news. Walker dynasty crumbles amidst fraud allegations." A reporter was standing outside the hospital, the very hospital where we were currently sitting. "Xiao Ling, 2# is greater than sources close to the family have leaked explosive documents revealing that the historic Walker estate is in severe financial distress. The reporter was saying, shouting over the wind, allegations of credit, fraud, and a predatory scheme to secure a family trust fund have shocked the Greenwich community. Furthermore, police are investigating reports of attempted unlawful imprisonment regarding Liam Walker's wife, Sayu Jinghao Lane, or Jinghao Dayu. Liam clicked the television off. The room plunged back into silence. He stared at the blank screen. His face was the color of ash. The creditors will be here soon, I said softly. Once the bank sees the news, they will move to seize the assets immediately to cut their losses. The house, the cars, the accounts, it is all gone. Liam, why? He cried out, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. Why would you destroy everything? Because you tried to destroy me, I replied. My voice was low, but it carried the weight of every hungry night, every drugged meal, every moment of terror I had endured in that golden cage. You wanted an heir, Liam. You wanted a legacy. Well, this is your legacy. You are going to be famous, just not in the way you wanted. There was a commotion in the hallway, loud voices, heavy footsteps. The door to the recovery room flew open. 2 men in dark suits entered. They were not doctors. They looked like sharks in human skin. Behind them stood a hospital security guard who looked apologetic. Mr. Liam Walker? One of the suits asked, holding out a paper. Yes, Liam whispered. We are from the fraud division of First National Bank. We have a writ here for the immediate seizure of all personal property. We also have a police officer outside who would like to have a word with you regarding some loan applications. Liam looked at me one last time. His eyes were wide, pleading, begging for me to say it was a joke, to say I had a plan to save him. I looked down at my daughter. She was sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the destruction of her father's world. I did not look back up. I pressed the button to call the nurse. Excuse me, I said to the air. Ignoring Liam completely, I am ready to be discharged now. As the officers stepped forward to handcuff my husband, I carefully wrapped my daughter in her simple white blanket. I stood up, wincing slightly from the pain of the birth, but feeling lighter than I had in years. I walked past Liam. I walked past the bank agents. I walked out of the room, leaving the wreckage of the Walker family behind me. In the hallway, nurses and orderlies stopped to stare. They had seen the news. They whispered behind their hands. I kept my head high. I was not the victim anymore. I was the survivor, and as I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing on the chaos of the maternity ward, I allowed myself a single, small smile. The world was burning down around them, but for the first time in 9 months, I could finally breathe. The radiator in my new apartment clanked and hissed like a dying animal. It was a sharp, aggressive sound that woke me up at 3 in the morning. Every morning, it was a far cry from the silent, climate-controlled air systems of the Walker estate. But I did not mind. The noise reminded me that I was somewhere real. I sat at the small, chipped laminate table in the kitchen, nursing a mug of instant coffee. The window looked out onto a brick wall and a fire escape where a stray cat was currently taking shelter from the relentless October rain. It had been 6 weeks since the birth, 6 weeks since the explosion. The dust had settled, but the air still tasted of ash. I looked at the newspaper lying open on the table. It was a few days old. The headline on page 4 was small, buried beneath stories about the upcoming election and the local weather. Heir to Walker estate sentenced to 4 years for bank fraud. There was no picture of Liam. The press had already moved on. They had consumed the tragedy, licked the bones clean. and found a new scandal to feast upon. Liam Walker was no longer the golden boy of Greenwich. He was just inmate number 7492 at the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury. Inner monologue. I should feel happy. I should feel vindicated. But when I think of him, I do not see the monster who tried to lock me away. I see the man who used to make me pancakes on Sundays, before the money ran out, before his mother poisoned his soul. I mourn him, not the man he became, but the man he could have been if he had just stood up to her. I stood up and walked to the sink to rinse my cup. My hands were red and chapped from washing dishes without a dishwasher. My back ached from the cheap mattress on the floor, but the door was locked from the inside, and I held the only key. The legal battle had been swift and brutal. With the evidence I provided, the prenup was voided due to fraud and duress. However, since there were no assets left, only mountains of debt, there was nothing to win. The bank took the mansion, the creditors took the cars, the art, the furniture. I walked away with nothing but my clothes, my daughter, and my freedom. And then there was Patricia. I grabbed my coat and the diaper bag. I needed to see it for myself one last time to make sure the boogeyman was truly gone. The bus ride to the outskirts of Stamford took 45 minutes. The Shady Grove Nursing and Rehabilitation Center was a squat, gray concrete building surrounded by a chain-link fence. It was a state-funded facility, understaffed and smelling faintly of bleach and boiled cabbage. I signed in at the front desk. The receptionist did not look up from her magazine. Room 204, she mumbled. I walked down the hallway. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. I passed rooms where elderly people sat in wheelchairs staring at static-filled televisions. I stopped at the doorway of room 204. It was a shared room. Patricia was in the bed by the window. Though the view was just the parking lot, she looked small. The stroke she suffered in the delivery room had left her partially paralyzed on the right side. Her face, once pulled tight by expensive surgeries, now drooped heavily. Her hair, usually dyed a fierce blonde, was growing out gray and thin. She was wearing a faded hospital gown. On the bedside table, there was no bone broth from the Himalayas. There was a cup of red gelatin and a plastic spoon. I stepped into the room. Patricia turned her head slowly. Her eyes focused on me. Then they drifted down to the carrier in my hand, to Phoenix. Recognition flickered in her gaze. And then, hate, pure, undiluted hate. She tried to speak. Her mouth worked, but only a garbled, wet sound came out. She raised her good hand, pointing a shaking finger at me, then at the baby. Inner monologue. She is still in there. The venom is still there, but she has no fangs left. She is a snake with its head cut off, still writhing in the dirt. I walked closer. I did not flinch. Hello, Patricia, I said softly. She made a noise that sounded like a growl. I brought her to see you. I continued, my voice calm. I wanted you to see that she is healthy. She is happy. And she is going to grow up without ever knowing the weight of your expectations. Patricia's eyes watered. A tear leaked out and rolled down her cheek, cutting through the dry skin. It was not a tear of sadness. It was a tear of rage. I looked around the bleak room. I hope the gelatin is to your liking, I said. It is full of collagen, good for the skin. I turned the stroller around. Goodbye, Patricia. I walked out of the room. I heard a crash behind me, the sound of a plastic cup hitting the floor. I did not look back. The ride home was quiet. Phoenix slept against my chest, When I got back to the apartment, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the bare floorboards. I sat on the floor and watched the light fade. I felt a strange hollowness in my chest. This was victory, was it not? My enemies were defeated. My child was safe, but survival had a cost. I felt old. I felt cynical. I found myself checking the locks 3 times a night. I found myself flinching when the phone rang. I had won the war, but I was still walking through the minefield in my mind. I looked down at Phoenix. She shifted in her sleep, her tiny hand gripping my finger. Inner monologue. I am not the same woman I was a year ago. That woman believed in fairy tales and family dinners. That woman is dead. But the woman who remains, Sayudzing Tuhash, is greater than she is made of steel, and she will never let anyone hurt you. I kissed my daughter's forehead. The radiator clanked again, loud and startling. This time, I did not jump. I just pulled the blanket tighter around us and waited for the dawn. 3 years is a long time in the life of a child, but it is a blink of an eye in the cycle of trauma. I sat at the small wooden desk in the back of the independent bookstore in Brooklyn. The line of women waiting to have their books signed stretched out the door and down the block. They held copies of my memoir, The Golden Cage, against their chests like shields. The cover featured a simple, stark image, a golden bird cage with the door ripped off its hinges. I smiled at a young woman who looked tired, perhaps pregnant. I signed her copy with my favorite inscription, "Run before you have to crawl." Inner monologue. They look at me and see a hero, a survivor. They do not see the calculator behind my eyes. I did not just survive the walkers. I harvested them. I took my pain, packaged it, and sold it to the highest bidder. It is the American way, is it not? If you cannot get justice in court, you get it in the royalties. I capped my pen. The reading was over. I walked out into the crisp autumn air. The leaves were turning that same brilliant gold they had the year my life fell apart. But this time, I was not watching them from a locked window. I walked a few blocks to the small brownstone I had bought with the advance money from the book. It was not a mansion. It had squeaky floorboards and a kitchen that was barely big enough for 2 people. There were no servants. There were no manicured hedges. But it was mine. Every brick, every nail, every drafty window belonged to me. I unlocked the front door. The sound of running feet thundered down the hallway. Sayudzing Ling. 2. Mama. Phoenix crashed into my legs. She was 3 years old now, a whirlwind of dark curls and fierce energy. She was wearing a bright yellow raincoat and yellow rain boots. Even though the sky was perfectly clear, I picked her up, inhaling the scent of strawberry shampoo and peanut butter. She was heavy, solid, and real. "Are we going to the park?" she demanded, pointing at the door. "We are," I said, kissing her cheek. We walked hand in hand down the street toward Prospect Park. Phoenix insisted on jumping over every crack in the sidewalk. She was loud. She was messy. She was everything Patricia would have hated. As we neared the entrance to the park, I slowed down near a trash can. A woman was hunched over, digging through the recycling bin for aluminum cans. She wore a tattered coat that might have once been expensive, perhaps a knockoff tweed. Her hair was matted and gray. For a second, my heart stopped. The angle of her shoulders, the desperate, clawing motion of her hands. It looked exactly like Patricia. I froze. The old fear, the instinct to hide, flared up in my chest. Inner monologue. Is it her? Did she escape the nursing home? Is she here to take my daughter? The woman turned around. She had a kind, weather-beaten face. She was not Patricia. Patricia was hundreds of miles away, trapped in her own body, staring at a parking lot in Connecticut, living on state subsidies. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. The woman smiled at Phoenix. That is a bright yellow coat. Little one, she rasped. You look like the sun. Phoenix beamed. I am the sun. I reached into my purse and pulled out a $20 bill. I did not do it out of pity. I did it because I could. I handed it to the woman. Have a good day, I said. I tightened my grip on Phoenix's hand. We walked past the woman, past the trash can, and into the open green space of the park. I looked down at my daughter. She was running ahead now, chasing a pigeon, screaming with delight. She was not a quiet, polite heir. She was a wild, uncontrollable girl. I thought about Liam, sitting in his cell, probably blaming me for every mistake he ever made. I thought about the $50 million that had dissolved into thin air. I was not a perfect victim. I had lead. I had manipulated. I had played their game better than they did. And I had used their destruction to build my own foundation. Some might call that cold. I called it evolution. Phoenix tripped, fell onto the grass, and immediately scrambled back up, laughing. She was wearing yellow, the color of cowardice. Patricia had called it. I smiled, watching my daughter run toward the horizon. Inner monologue. Patricia wanted a king to save her crumbling empire. She was a fool. Kings are bound by duty and lineage. I gave birth to something better. I gave birth to a woman who will build her own kingdom, brick by brick, without owing a single soul a dime. I stepped onto the grass, feeling the earth solid beneath my feet, and followed the sun